Oh, did you see her?
Yeah.
Oh.
We are live.
All right, good morning and welcome to the House Environment Committee. This morning, we are going to take up H238, the PFAS bill, with Matt Chapman from the Agency of Natural Resources. Welcome back.
Good morning. Nice to be here. For the record, Matt Chapman, Division Director from the Waste Management and Prevention Division. I figured I would just go over, I think I would classify there's probably three major changes that came over from the Senate. I'm going to add to Michael's sort of walkthrough yesterday, just sort of a little bit of the background on each of those three changes. And then happy to take questions from anyone on anything. So the first one is the definition of intentionally added. And that definition, just to add to Michael's walkthrough yesterday, is from the state of Rhode Island. So basically, Rhode Island has a more expansive definition than many other states. It includes PFAS added in the process of making products, as well as when it's intentionally added to for its functional or technical effect. So as a result, it captures, I think it is fair to say that both it is a definition being used by another jurisdiction, so we sort of gain some of that critical mass by being consistent with other places. It also represents, I think, a balanced approach that meets both the agency attorney general's office and Department of Health's needs, as well as addressing some of the concerns raised by manufacturers with the initial sort of definition of intentionally added that the agency came in with at the beginning of sort of the process. So I'll pause for a second to ask if anyone has questions or wants to go into the definition of intentionally added.
Excuse me. Do folks have questions? Representative Chapin.
I guess I would just love to hear your assessment on this definition compared to what we passed out of our committee. Substantively, how do they change PFAS in the manufacturing process that would or would not be included? Or is it really more of language and clarity?
Well, so there are some differences. Some of the interpretation inevitably is going to come out. So I'm the Agency of Natural Resources. The program's housed in the Attorney General's office. So take a caveat with the things that I'm going to say. I am not the agency that's administering this bill. Having said that, I mean, I think the concerns were the sort of open-endedness to the definition that came out of the House that allowed any water with any concentration of PFAS to be used in the manufacturing process was of significant concern to both the agency and the Attorney General's office. We sort of went back and started having conversations around whether we should put some sort of numeric standard in for how much PFAS. That was of significant concern to the business industry. I think everyone settled in on this definition that Rhode Island is using. It does a couple things. One is the previous definition talked about the intentional addition of a chemical that resulted in PFAS in the product. This talks about the intentional addition of PFAS. That's different, right? So you're not intentionally adding water and PFAS for its functional or technical effect in the product, right? So no one adds PFAS to the water so that they can get PFAS in the product. So that's sort of number one. I think, from my perspective as well, I guess it's always useful to link up with another jurisdiction, just so, frankly, these laws are, there are challenges in administering them, right? They are, and so the more states that are doing it and the more consistent we are in the way we approach it, the better.
So what I'm hearing is substantively, it's really the same outcome as what we were working on and what we thought we put out from our committee, but in a different approach with different.
I think so. I mean,
and just leaving water completely out of it.
Yes.
I'm hearing.
Yes. I mean, it's still going to capture PFAS used in the manufacturing process. So if you have emulsion agents or other agents used in the manufacturing process where you would expect PFAS to end up in the product, that is captured. It also has, I think we generally agree, the administrating agencies, that the byproduct related language that is in the Rhode Island definition captures things like precursors and other things. So if you're adding chemical A and chemical B and ending up with PFAS and you're adding it for that functional or technical effect, that comes in as well.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, moving on to the second significant change, which is the series of changes around fluorinated containers. So, the committee, the House added in a unavoidable use waiver. I will say, notwithstanding the fact that the unavoidable use waiver was in the initial legislation for the sort of final broad scoped program, trying to add an unavoidable use waiver in for a single product without having budget, personnel, and fees associated with it, it wouldn't have worked. And I think I was absent when the committee took that amendment up and didn't have the opportunity to share some of the, I think, implementation challenges with an unavoidable use waiver program. I mean, I think when you're looking at one out in the future, maybe 3 to 5 years, it's easier to sort of plan and budget for it. When you're looking at one that might be pretty soon, and frankly, there are a lot of fixed costs that come along with creating a program like that. It's pretty technically dense. The other sort of challenge with it is the way we had structured it in our initial sort of proposal was that we were basically relying upon other jurisdictions having adopted substantially similar legislation. And that was primarily to help handle the unavoidable use waiver issue, right? Because that's going to be the most resource intensive part of any PFAS, comprehensive PFAS legislation that gets passed. So listening to the concerns that industry had presented around the use of fluorinated containers, I think the ultimate sort of, again, compromise or middle ground position was the state of Minnesota is adopting a comprehensive PFAS management program. That program should be in effect in 2032. That pushes the fluorinated container provisions out till after Minnesota has adopted their program. And we're assuming they're either going to deal with the fluorinated container issue as a part of their program, and we can sort of use their good examples to manage them within our system, or we will have identified problems and we'll be back here to talk about how to address the problems. I guess I will also add on top of that there is a report on fluorinated containers and the issues on prohibitions and use of fluorinated containers that was added in the Senate. I will just say that I have, and I've probably said it to the committee, I have been asking since about November for a single example of a problem that exists with fluorinated containers and have yet to receive one from industry. I'm not saying that there's not a problem, but it's hard to address an issue when you don't have examples of the problem you're trying to address. So hopefully this report will help people come forward and explain the problems in finding substitutes to fluorinated containers so that we can craft an effective regulatory program around that. So that's fluorinated containers.
Just thinking if we heard anyone, I mean, I think the theory is that it leaches into the product.
Well, it's certainly a concern. The use of a fluorinated container is certainly an issue in a number of sort of products. We have evidence that the containers have leached and commercial chemical products have been impacted. I think the challenge that I have had is that the literature available to the public says that there are alternatives to fluorinated containers everywhere. The concerns I've heard that there are certain uses where fluorinated containers are the only alternative. I don't have real examples of that, right? Like I don't have sort of like, we haven't been able to walk through and actually identify
Where
there's a necessity for the use of a fluorinated container.
Yeah, which I think might have been part of when we put that amendment in. We were anticipating there would be very few instances.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concern with an unavoidable use waiver is that, especially the way it was structured, is that it doesn't prohibit anyone from coming in to actually ask for the waiver, and then it becomes the burden of either the Attorney General's office or Agency of Natural Resources to review and process all of those waiver requests. And frankly, if there's no fee or gateway to apply, I'm concerned that everyone would just ask for the waiver.
Okay, and so the study coming back will inform us whether there actually are unavoidable uses.
That is the intention, yes.
Can you remind us the date when that comes back?
I will.
Okay.
I think it's 2028, but I will confirm that. We've added a lot of studies to this report or this legislation, and I will admit that I think the agency is comfortable with all of the studies and the checkbacks that are have been added to try and ensure that we continue providing the legislature with good information and move forward on these issues. So I will check on the date and get back to you hopefully before.
We can find it too.
Okay.
I just want to, I think it is something.
I don't know it off the top of my head. The effective dates have gotten more complicated as we've moved through the process. And I guess the last issue, and you know, there are members from the professional firefighters here who can speak to it as well, is the addition of the PPE phase outs for or the PFAS in PPE phase outs for firefighters. And I think that again, I think that it represents a good sort of position that puts us in a position of knowing that we're going to phase out the majority of PPE right around or slightly after the states of Connecticut and Massachusetts have phased out PPE in here, and for the most part, other firefighter PPE. There were questions that were raised by a number of people around respirators. It takes those respirator phase outs and moves them a little further out into the distance for respirator PFAS phase outs.
Do you happen to know which part of the respirator has the PFAS in it? Is it actually the filter that people are breathing through? Because that would
So,
be.
I mean, I will turn it over to Chris Stubbe, who's with the professional firefighters. He is much more, he has much more information on the details associated with the sort of where PFAS might be added in a respirator. I guess I'll just say that it is clear to the agency that there are alternatives / PFAS free PPE for everything except the respirators. And then I think there's even with the respirators, I think it's a question of are there component parts within the respirators that have PFAS in it? Are there just a limitation on the number of respirators that are out there? So how developed is the market at this point? So. And those are really the three major areas where there are changes. Like I mentioned, there were a number of reports that were added. I mean, I'm happy to do a report to better inform the legislature on issues that were of interest. So that's not a significant issue.
Okay. And then we have juvenile ATVs that you have on.
No, I guess I will just say that it was an interest of an individual member within the committee in health and welfare in the Senate. The committee elected to go ahead and add that in to accommodate the individual member. And I think from my position, as far as, you know, we're always looking to reduce as much PFAS in as many places as possible, but the number and amount of PFAS in children's ATVs and the potential complexities with phase outs, it's not something that I guess I would say is a high priority issue for the Agency of Natural Resources.
Did they take testimony from the industry on this? You know?
I don't want, I wasn't at every meeting. I don't recall there being testimony.
Other questions for Matt Chapman, Representative North?
I do. Getting back to the container question, it seemed, one of the things that I thought that we were trying to do with the way we had crafted the verbiage there was to prohibit containers of the products that contain the products that are banned from having PFAS on a much sooner time scale than the broader concept of all containers. And it seems like we've relegated that or pushed that off or eliminated even that concept. It's just everything's about all containers.
Now, I believe that the amendment still retains I need to go back and take another look. My recollection was it still has if it's a product that you phased out and then it can't be in a fluorinated container, and that date is earlier than the sort of more comprehensive phase out on fluorinated containers. That fluorinated container phase out was pushed out. I think it wasn't the industries who have products that need to be phased out who raised the concerns. It was other people.
Okay, so 2494G.
Yes.
Section A is
Yes.
still there.
Yes.
References the 1 through 9 products categories. And that the containers of those products shall not be sold in a container.
Are you looking at the side by side or are you looking?
I'm looking at the side by side, yeah.
So what page are you-
Page 9, it looks like the bottom of page 9 is where the fluorine treated containers section starts. That's section 2494G.
Mhm.
So that subsection A is still there, I guess.
Mhm.
So I think that addresses my concern.
Okay, great.
Thank
Further questions? Representative Austin?
Have there been firefighters that have contacted or contracted health issues that can be specifically linked to the PFAS?
So that's a really difficult question, right? So, again, for me as a environmental and public health sort of official, we look at, population, not individual data, right? So we're looking at, do these chemicals at a population level have adverse effects that we would expect to see when people are exposed to it? Once you start getting down into sort of like individual sort of medical information, it starts getting HIPAA protected. And it's frankly something that doesn't come to A&R. The Department of Health does have some information on individual health exposure issues, but again, it's mostly confidential protected information. Now, there may be word of mouth stories that people share.
What's substantiated, not substantiated?
I can't, your exposure to PFAS is not a good thing, right?
Mhm.
And so, anything you can do to reduce your exposure through clothing or through inhalation or through drinking consumption, and frankly, your largest pathway to human exposure is through drinking it. That is what we are worried the most about PFAS in drinking water and that exposure pathway to humans. So there are others, and those all contribute. But you'll see us focused in mostly on drinking water and preventing things, frankly, from impacting drinking water.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Bartholomew?
Just to add to what you were saying, is anytime you're on an individual level, it's very difficult to determine cause. You develop a medical syndrome, which risk factor precipitated that disease.
Mhm.
It's almost impossible to tell. You can guess, but
Right. Which is normally we talk more in terms of correlation than causation, right? Like your issues may be indicative of PFAS exposure. I mean, but it's very, very rare, almost never will you hear a state public health agency say PFAS caused these adverse health outcomes.
so if you look at something like smokers, you can look at 1 million smokers and you see various syndromes that are appearing more often in the population. You look at one smoker, what does it mean?
And
Can I just say one more?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but there must have been a rationale for banning PFAS in firefighter or, I mean, I'm just curious. I'm not, debating or anything. I'm just
sure.
Curious, being a former fighter.
Well, I mean, I think for the policy, I mean, I'm certainly happy to say it, but I'm also happy to yield to Chris. I know that Eve would be more than happy, and I know the firefighters have really taken a lead role in advocating for the reduction of PFAS in turnout gear and equipment. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to yield to Chris and let him
Not
explain.
doubting it. I'm
No,
just
no, I
curious.
understand, and I'm happy to explain it, but you've got an expert here, so rather than having me do it, I'm happy to turn it over to him, let him do it.
Right, so if there are there further questions for Matt Chapman? All right, thank you so much for
Right.
joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we don't know you, but we welcome if you want to join us.
Happy to.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name's Chris Doobie. I'm the president of the Professional Firefighters of Vermont. 33 years, Hartford Fire Department, 32 and a half technically, retired the end of last year. Very passionate about PFAS. So I'll give you the high level view. I don't have any, happy to send you my testimony I gave in the Senate so you guys can look at it. So I speak for the professional firefighters, the IAFF. On the volunteer side, I know that they have a lot of concerns, and I'm going to try to put some of that at ease. But on the national level, the IAFF is pushing for federal legislation to address PFAS in our gear. So we have our own health and science department, our own physicians that we've hired to do OCMED to study this. So we know that it's affecting us, but what degree? It's probably much more than what we know. So one of the big pushes is that we can control our gear. We want manufacturers to phase out PFAS. I've been in long enough to know, and I want to thank Representative Morris for being a sponsor on our bill H250. When I got on the fire services volunteers in the mid '80s, and the gear back then didn't have PFAS in it. It was they had neoprene moisture barriers that protected you from the water getting in, and it was uncumbersome. It was hot, dry. It was hot, sweaty, but it worked. With the advent of PFAS, they were able to tell us that they were making a moisture barrier that would breathe, meaning that we could sweat out, but moisture couldn't come back in. Unfortunately, through the years, we found that there's been adverse effects with the PFAS in the gear. So a brief overview is our fire gear has 3 layers. It has the outer shell that's typically flame resistant. It can be made of Kevlar, Nomex, PBI. Then you have a moisture barrier, or vapor barrier, whatever you want to call it. It's supposed to protect moisture from getting into our body, but also designed to wick out our moisture also. And then you have a thermal barrier that's supposed to protect you from the heat. And that's also supposed to be designed to release the heat with the body. One of the biggest areas we're seeing PFAS in is still in the moisture barrier. They're using a product. I'm not going to give you the specific name, but it's a Teflon, essentially it's the same as Teflon. Through regular use, the fibers break down, they release the PFAS. A little history on this. So 75% of active duty deaths on the career side in the firefighter, the IAFF, 75% are due to cancers, occupational cancer. So meaning somebody gets sick on the job, gets a diagnosis of cancer, ends up dying because of that while they're still active. Oddly enough, as fires have gone down, cancer rates are still going up. So our association is, the IAFF is drawn that we've got our own scientists studying this, and they're saying, yes, there is a connection between the PFAS in our gear and the cancer rates. Again, to what degree, we don't know. We're thinking it's much higher than what it is. We've done tests on, how does it shed onto the body? So we actually had a group that did a research paper on swabbing our skin before we put on our gear and after, and seeing what the levels of PFAS. And there's been a significant number, high level of PFAS on our skin after just wearing the gear for a short period of time. So my advocacy for this is that Massachusetts was the first to pass a law banning PFAS in their protective equipment. Theirs is pretty aggressive. So it went into effect January 1st of this year, where they had to label it. And by 2027, January 2027, they can't sell any PFAS in their protective clothing. Connecticut followed suit. They're going to be, their ban goes in effect January 1st of 2028. When we initially proposed the bill, it was to go July 1st of 2028, making it 6 months later. Hearing testimony, there was some concern on price and so forth. So we decided that we can compromise and bump it to 2029, knowing that around us, these other states are going to do it. They're not. My only concern with that, and I told them in the Senate side, was that potentially they could flood the market in Vermont because these manufacturers are going to be sitting on truckloads of fabric that they want to get out because they can't move it as readily as they used to. Hopefully that's not the problem. Currently, there is a manufacturer out there, Milliken and Company, that does make all 3 layers of the gear PFAS free. The biggest obstacle they're facing right now is the NFPA standard on testing it. They currently test all 3 of our layers separately. The IFF has fought for and lobbied and has been successful that they're changing that standard. It's going to go into effect September of this year, 2025, where they're going to test our ensemble as all 3 layers together. So one of the issues they had was they talk about a vertical flame test. Our argument came that the 2 layers closest to your body are not going to be exposed to flame. So that test is irrelevant to that. They also do a 40, it's a long duration test with ultraviolet lights. And we're also saying that those 2 layers that are not going to be exposed to the light so in the long story, they want to test it all as an ensemble. So that'll make it easier for manufacturers of textiles to make materials that can pass that test. So I think that you're going to see a transition going to it. Like I said, Milliken is the first. They've been out a little over a year. There's only a handful of companies that really make firefighter protective clothing textiles. DuPont's a big one, Tenkate. So with this change, you're going to see the shift to that. There has been studies out there that put some doubt in people's mind, and I want to dispel that myth. It's a study out of North Carolina State University, and if anybody's done any research, the individual that does this presentation is part of what they call the Wilson School of Textiles, which has ties to DuPont. So it's made us a little hesitant on the IFF side that, that they're selling, like he's putting diesel fuel basically on the gear and showing how it absorbs and all that. And my 2 cents on it is that if you're covered in flammable liquids, you shouldn't be going into a fire. You got another whole problem. But unfortunately, a lot of firefighters, career and volunteers, see that and they get sold on that saying, oh, our gear is not safe. That's incorrect. PFAS-free gear still has to pass the same standards. Dousing it in diesel fuel or gasoline is not realistic. I've done this for a combination of career and volunteer for 40 years. I knew that if you get soaked, first of all, if you get contaminated with diesel fuel, we had a fire in Hartford where we threw the gear out. Had the person that had the fire, the insurance company, buy us new gear. Just couldn't clean it. If you get covered in a product like that, you shouldn't be going into an environment where there's going to be flame or heat. Okay, that's just stupidity on their part. So I do agree that we need to train our new firefighters better. The other issue I've heard is cost. Everybody says, well, it's going to be 2 times the amount. That's not the case. So City of Vancouver has gone all PFAS free. San Francisco, Austin, closer to us, Concord, New Hampshire has gone PFAS free. There's 5 or 6 departments in Mass. I don't know off the top of my head who specifically that have already made that transition. So you're seeing it more and more going that route. With the cost, there was a department in this state that the chief got a quote, and he told me it came in about $150 more. That could be just from the year to year increase. So as more and more products come on the market, certainly within the next 2 or 3 years, that price is going to be compared, maybe even cheaper. I don't know. The other issue I heard with cost from the volunteer side in specific, I've heard it from a handful of career too. They think they got to go out and buy all new gear 2029. That's absolutely not the case. It's just stating that any new gear sold July 1st of 2029 must be PFAS free. So it gives them ample time to get out. And I think that is, on the volunteer side, calm that quite a bit, thinking, well, we don't have to go out and buy it. No. If he's going to buy 5 sets of gear, those 5 sets have to be PFAS free at that point. With respect to the respirators, the air packs, I know down in Massachusetts, my colleagues down there, they were contacted by one of the larger air pack manufacturers. There was only one. And their concern came around third-party vendors meeting, getting our certification that those pieces or parts they were getting from a third-party vendor were truly PFAS free. You're seeing it mainly, for my research, in the O-rings, the Teflon tape they use on some of the connections, some of the lubes they're using in the internal parts, and the coating on some of the metal parts has PFAS in it. So it's not that my point is, it's not that they can't do it, they just didn't know if the Massachusetts timeframe was gonna give them enough time to validate it from their third-party vendors, so. I'm happy to take any questions.
Sorry if I missed this, but is it, so in the respirators themselves, where is it found?
Mainly in the O-rings.
That's what you're
using.
using?
Yeah, the O-rings, some of the
Not
Teflon.
the filters that people. breathe.
So they do make some filter cartridges, like if you put on that have the cartridges, that use PFAS, and that's mainly for petroleum products. On our end, we're not gonna do that. If I'm going to something that has petroleum, because that's just a filter for the more or less, I'm gonna be on a supplied air respirator. Because I don't want to breathe any of the products of that, the toluene, the benzene, any of that, the bad stuff that the gases may not be filtered out. But they do have them still in some of the cartridges. I don't know if it's all of them. And I think that'd be more for industry, not, and like in our field, we're gonna be on air packs, be it an SCBA or a supplied, big respirator if we're doing confined space.
Wondering, yeah, now I'm wondering about people, the ones that people use when they're painting.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And it could be in those too. I know that my researcher said that it's some of the cartridges, it could be exposed to petroleum products, so it doesn't wick through the filter cartridge itself.
Mhm.
Like I say, we typically don't use those in the fire service. It's mainly supplied air respirators, the air packs on our back, or if it's confined space, we have air carts with umbilicals that we can use for long durations. And again, the main issue that this one company had was getting validation from the third-party vendors that these O-rings are PFAS free, that, that this lube that they're using on the internal parts that move is truly PFAS free. And it's not that they can't do it. They were just concerned with the time frame of having it done in a year and a half, 2 years. So, and there are manufacturers that do make air packs that they claim they have no PFAS in any of their products. So
Back to cancer rates, cancer rates for firefighters are significantly higher than rates for other populations?
it is. Generally, it's about 14% higher incidence.
Higher.
Higher, yeah. Now, some of that is due to the fact that we go into fires and we can't. So I've always said, I can't control what's burning, but I should be able to control what I'm wearing. And that's our whole push, is that if we can eliminate it from that, maybe we can do it. Like I say, cancer rates are continually going up. When 5 years ago, it was around 60%. Most recent numbers show it at 75% for occupational cancer. And it's odd that in a time when fires are going down, that the cancer rates are going up, and they're finding that, you store your gear in the firehouse, you're breathing as your gear, gets 2 or 3 or 4 years old, it's gone through numerous wash cycles. Those fibers have loosened enough that the PFAS are being released more readily, so it's more in the open air around the firehouses that you're essentially living in, 42 to 56 hours or more a week, so.
All right, do members have further questions? Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're giving me the time, I appreciate it.
See everyone else. Are there others in the room who want to comment on the changes that were made? You're here, VPIRG is here. Allison, anyone? Paul Burns, would you like to?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paul Burns. I'm the Executive Director of VPIRG, the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. We follow closely the conversations and considerations and changes ultimately in the Senate legislation. We're comfortable with the changes that Mr. Chapman outlined earlier here. The juvenile ATV wouldn't have been something that we would have proposed or necessarily supported, but this is an art of compromise to move things forward. It is not what we would consider to be a poison pill for the legislation if it was necessary for the Senate to move it forward. But in all seriousness, it was it could be used on the seating or something. It really is better to have it out. But if that's a compromise that was critically important, the overall bill is still very good, a very important step forward. The intentionally added definitional change, you may recall, we VPIRG initially proposed the Rhode Island definition in this committee. So we are comfortable with that. That's a significant improvement over the current definition. And it seemed to have now fairly broad support. So that seems like an important step forward. We strongly support the addition of the protections for firefighting gear. I think that's just an excellent addition to the bill that comes from the Senate. So I sit here today in strong support of the legislation we have. They did consider going a little earlier with the cookware and then ultimately kept the date that you had. So I might go a little earlier, but that's not before you now. So I think it is a product of some compromise, but it's an excellent next step forward in this area. And I guess I would just add too that I think it's fair to say that the members of the Senate committee share the belief of many here that this is not the be all and end all, that there is certainly still more to come in this area, but really appreciate their work and obviously your consideration.
Great, thank you. Do members have questions? Thanks for joining us. Anyone else want to speak on this? Great. All right. Right. This bill, where is this bill? This bill just passed the Senate yesterday, so it's on its way here. It'll show up on our calendar soon. Do members want a straw poll now? Otherwise, we may be in the position of needing to scramble when it shows up. Okay.
Right down.
And Kate is remote. Are you with us, Kate?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. And all right, so I guess I would say the only thing I've heard is this sort of funny edition of the juvenile ATV. Then it seems like unfortunate reality of that situation, but do any members have strong feelings on that? All right. So all those in favors of the changes to H 238 as sent to us from the Senate, raise their hand. Okay. Seeing an 11-0 straw polls in support of H 238 as it will be coming from the Senate to us. Thank you, members. Thank you others for joining us today. And with that, we're adjourned, but I would say, just remind folks that we are in kind of, like people like to call it, hurry up and wait mode on things. So always just be patient, be around and aware, and we may need to come together as a committee to take a straw poll on something on short notice. So just be checking your email and texts. With that, we are adjourned for the